Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here on a Wednesday. My name is Nikki Maggio. I am the programs manager here at Art New York, and my pronouns are they, them. A visual description of myself is I'm a white trans person with black, brown hair tied in a bun. Because it's Halloween soon, I'm wearing a fun Halloween sweater with a Snow White's poison apple in the front in green, pink, black, and jeans. And I'm so excited to introduce this panel. Before we begin, I would like to offer a land acknowledgement. We would like to take this time to acknowledge that wherever we are currently located on Turtle Island, otherwise known as North America, we are on occupied territory. Art New York's membership in the 5 boroughs of New York City operates on the unceded ancestral land of the Lenape, Wappinger, Canarsie, Rockaway, and Matinecock communities. We want to honor and celebrate all of these indigenous communities, their elders past and present, as well as for future generations. We also want to take the time to acknowledge that after there was stolen land, there were stolen people. We want to honor the generations of displaced and enslaved people that build and continue to build the country we occupy today. Since we're gathered today in a virtual space as well, let's also take a moment to consider the legacies of colonizations embedded within technologies, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. We are using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many indigenous communities. Even the technologies that are central to much of the art we make leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect indigenous peoples worldwide. We invite you to join us in acknowledging all of this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good of the time and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, anti-racism, and allyship. Thank you. The virtual part of that land acknowledgement was written by Adrienne Wong of Spiderweb Show in Ontario, Canada. And to learn more about whose land you're occupying, visit native-land.ca. Thank you. Before I pass it over to the incredible Danielle King, I'd like to do some thank yous to our ASL interpreters here today, Stephanie and Lisa, to HowlRound, who is live streaming with our live stream partners, Transcend Streaming, and National Caption Institute for providing live captioning for today's session. Thank you all so much, and I'll pass it over to Danielle King.
Hi, everybody. Hello, people on HowlRound right now and in future people. I'm really thrilled to be here today. We are joined by some fantastic guests who, yes, I get very nervous around because I'm a bit of a fangirl. But these 3 guests are actively working on increasing access in the theater and who have embraced this work with care, curiosity, and commitment to access as a daily practice. So we have a lot that we want to talk about today, so we're going to do some very brief intros and then get into it. So I will model, but if you could please say your name, your pronouns, a visual description if you so choose, and your role. So hi everyone, I'm Danielle King. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Director of Program Services at Art New York. And a brief visual description. I am an olive-skinned white woman with shoulder-length brown hair that's pulled halfway back. I'm wearing a brown leather dress with a green jacket and some gold shoes that I'm obsessed with. And we are sitting in 4 chairs against 2 banners that say Alliance of Residence Theater, New York.
I'm Stacey Leigh. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the manager of community outreach and group sales for Second Stage Theater. Visual description, African-American senior woman with a brown head wrap and a green long dress with flowers on it. And some kicks that I love, but maybe don't put me in the best of fashion circles. So, also glasses.
Thank you. My name is Kerry Candeloro. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman with short brown curly hair and a bob. I'm wearing a jean blazer, lovingly known as a jazer. I have a limb difference. I'm wearing some black and white checkered pants and some well-loved New Balances because my feet hurt all the time. And I am the access coordinator at Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts.
Hi, I'm Maria Porto. I use she, her pronouns. I am the founder of Access Broadway New York, and I'm also the director of ASL production at IDC. I am a Latinx woman with dark brown hair that's kind of curly. It's purple underneath. I'm wearing a blue and gold shirt, a black blazer, and black pants. I have a 50-pound black lab named Daisy underneath my seat, who is probably trying to find food. I also wear heels because I didn't know what else to wear.
Awesome. Thank you all. So as we get started, we are going to be very mindful of using, throughout this conversation, acronyms and try to define them, in the first use. And also, we acknowledge that this is a very expansive topic and that there are many different kinds of access needs and access services, more than we are likely to be able to name or talk about in this one conversation. However, we also want to make sure that everyone has a basic understanding when we do reference specific terms. And so we're going to spend a moment doing a little glossary moment and make sure that everyone feels comfortable with terms that are likely to come up in this conversation. So I'm going to name them and ask you all how familiar you in the in-person audience feel about them, and if I feel like we have some needs for definition or feel tentative, I'm going to ask the panel to help me define them. Yes? Great. So the first is ASL interpretation, American Sign Language. Great. Awesome. Dazzle, Director of Artistic Sign Language. No. Cool. Will someone please define a dazzle?
Can I?
Yes.
Director of Artistic Sign Language.
Can you talk about what that role is?
Oh, sorry. The Director of Artistic Sign Language on any project will work with ASL interpreters or deaf performers to make sure that what is being said or what is being performed is translated into not only grammatically correct, but also the ability to tell the story in sign language is the most understood by the massive amount of people that are watching it, and they'll work with those people before a performance or before an event.
Thank you. Great. Assistive listening devices. Great. Captioning, open and closed. Great. Audio description, both live audio description and recorded audio description. Lovely, this is great. Touch tours. Yay.
Oh, do we have?
Oh, sorry. I didn't, okay, great.
Sure. A touch tour is something that is like a pre-show tactile experience designed for folks who are blind or low vision. It's one thing to hear over audio description that a shirt is fuzzy, but to be able to touch that fuzzy shirt before the show and then be able to hear about it creates a more dynamic experience for the audience.
Thank you for catching that. Autism-friendly performances. Visual stories. Oh, let's maybe talk about visual stories. Does someone want to share?
This is news to me.
Great, I can do that. So a social narrative or a visual story can give an audience member a little bit more information about a show before they attend. It can be things like where accessible entrances are, what to expect in terms of sound effects or things on stage, the run of show. Sometimes it can also include the cast of characters. It can just be a really great tool for folks who may be on the spectrum or just anybody who wants to know a little bit more information about a show before they attend.
Wow,
Loud noises.
Yeah, loud noise, yeah, effects like that, things that would be helpful in terms of like sensory kind of like things to know before you go.
We'll touch on know before you go. And
Yes, we will.
at this, it's later in the conversation. Thank you, Kerry. In fact, that's one of the things, we'll talk about it, but we're gonna, it's on my list. And then for digital resources, talking about when things are screen reader compatible. Hearing, I'm seeing nods. Alt text, right? Alt text, great. Someone wanted to define alt text in marketing? Yeah.
Sure. Alt text, alternative text, is used in a lot of social media platforms and or accessible PDFs, accessible emails that describes what is in the photo that is included with the statement, right? So if I have a photo of Daisy included in a, hey, like come celebrate Black Lab Day 2026, right? I'm gonna describe the photo as Daisy, a 50-pound black lab, sits in the center of a photo smiling in front of a Alliance of Resident Theaters poster, and she's holding a bone. And that gives the blind, low vision, and neurodivergent communities just some background on what's happening in the photo.
It's similar to something called image descriptions, which might be a more familiar term. Image descriptions are typically, alt text is typically embedded into the photo file itself. So if you're using a screen reader, instead of the photo appearing, you would hear the description that you are that you've written for it. And an image description is something that like a lot of people will use in like captions for a photo. You might see them a lot on Instagram. It's not as tied to the photo file as like alt text is.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Great. If other things come up, other terms, other services that we haven't defined, we will. I will keep us accountable to defining them. Beth.
I do want to kind of add that some of the terminology is somewhat fluid in different fields. So you said autism friendly, there's sensory friendly, there's DAZZLE, meaning Director of Artistic Sign Language, there's Director of American Sign Language, we actually use Director of Interpreters. I mean, so some of the terminology hasn't been like standardized enough yet that it's still somewhat fluid.
Yes, thank you for that, Beth.
Can you actually expand on autism friendly, please?
Sure. Do you want to take that one?
Well, just insofar as we understand it at our theater, we refer to it as relaxed when we have conversations about it, so that we recognize that it is a benefit not just to the theater goer who may be sensory, highly sensorily involved in their environment because of an autism or spectrum diagnosis, but also because they may, it could be a range of things from PTSD to just processing issues. But the idea is to create an environment which relaxes some of the more extreme elements of the space in which you're welcoming the person, so that they can focus on the story and so that they can be prepared for what might be dramatic elements that are coming, but also lowering the intensity of some of those elements, because it doesn't have to be at 10 to bring the story to the person. So creating an environment that allows all to just engage rather than having to protect themselves from the storytelling that's happening.
Yeah, a lot of times performances that are deemed autism friendly will have things like a certain level of lights in the house so that it's never completely dark. They may have chill out spaces or quiet spaces, fidgets, a no shushing zone, headphones and fidgets for folks. And different theaters have different kind of terminologies to refer to it, like Beth was saying as well. So some theaters are using the term autism friendly or sensory friendly. Some theaters use relaxed. And it will depend on the theater and the organization how much the artistic content is changed. Sometimes they will, have a certain volume of decibel or certain light level that they keep. Sometimes they don't change any of those artistic elements and they provide a more detailed like know before you go guide so that folks are aware of those elements and can, you know, take care of themselves if they need to. But across the board, the idea of these kind of performances overall is to change the social environment so that folks can express themselves the way that they need to, move the way they need to. We have a lot of times parents of young children who come to our relaxed performances because all a child wants to do is scream and run around, and what a perfect place to do that while you're watching the opera or the orchestra. I have a lot of friends with back problems, and so we're all very familiar with our very old theater seats, and so being able to sit in a theater seat for a long time is very uncomfortable, so to be able to move around, take in different environments as you need to is also really accessible for folks. So does that kind of answer the large umbrella that is relaxed / autism friendly? Great, awesome.
Thank you. And I think, yes, it's a good note. Oh, sorry, Maria, did you want to say something?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, at some theaters, they also have monitors in the lobby for the breakout spaces, so that if you do have to engage with your child or an adult or whomever needs that space, you can also not miss the show that's happening, right? And I think that's really beneficial to families, especially who feel like, oh, you know, if we do need to go to a relaxed space, we don't want to miss the reason that we're here.
Yeah. Great. I think just in this initial part of this conversation, we have highlighted a number of things, which is that, again, this is a very expansive conversation. This work is constantly evolving. It is highly individualized, and there's no checklist, right, in this work. Maybe, I mean.
Oh no, I mean, there's no checklist in that. My checklist would be like 7 pages long.
Right.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh. No.
It's a cloud
Yeah, it's
of considerations, and you production by production and space by
Yeah.
space. Right.
So let's get into that a little bit. So we're going to start, really start at the beginning, right? The idea that you and your collaborators or your organization have committed to increasing accessibility for at your theater or for your shows or your work. And you now need to put those practices into action. In a way that is specific to your organization, specific to the project you're doing, the way you operate, your capacity, your budget, you know, that is specific to what you are able to do in that moment, and what feels appropriate. So where do you begin? I'm going to ask Maria to start us off, because Maria has worked with a number of companies to help them design and implement making their spaces and their work more accessible. How do you recommend people start, Maria?
Step 1, breathe. I constantly get companies that send these lovely emails, but they're always all over the place, right? Everyone's like, I want to do everything right now. And I'm like, that's awesome. Understand that it's an entire institution activity, right? We're going to talk about group projects. It's a group project. A lot of times when I work with newer companies, I'll advise them, like, this is a team effort. This is not, you know, let's assign one person accessibility, and then great, that one person now has 9 million responsibilities and no support, because that doesn't really change anything. So when I go into a particular institution, it's making sure that every department has one representative on an accessibility task force, right? Or on an accessibility team, right? You need to have a liaison in every department. Marketing, operations, front of house, box office, programming, and the financial department in a real serious turnabout phrase, I guess. I like to make it so that it's a little bit more digestible, right? One of the nice things about working in a company with 8 other disabled people is we have this like round table of ideas, right? And we try to work with institutions to be like, we're going to break this down for you. These are the things that you can immediately do for accessibility. These are things like adding captioning to your video content that goes out, adding alt descriptions to things that go out. These are the things immediately that can happen right now, right? Then we look at something that's like a year down the road. we have to plan for budgeting. Can we have more accessible performances? Can we have, I worked on a show that was a disabled circus, right? Are we set up backstage for that? Can we be set up backstage for that? And then we look to the long term, right? The long term is more like, how do we engage with the community? How do we reach out to people who historically haven't felt comfortable coming back to the theater because services have not been there for them? And how do we grow that, right? How do we make sure that our space is not only welcoming, but we're going above and beyond to connect with communities that already don't show up because, you know, oh, I went to a theater and there was no captioning, no interpretation, no open captioning. And I was like, cool, maybe I just won't try that again, right? So how do we build back that trust? Or, you know, for my blind folks, a lot of times, like, you'll go to the theater and they'll be like, that AD track hasn't been written. You could listen to the show, though, and at that point, it's like, no. So the way that we go about engaging, like, in our first step is make sure that you understand that this is a team effort. Let me meet, or let whomever meet your entire team, and then really talk about realistic goals versus like, I want everything in the moon, right? My realistic goal will be, I want these 2 levels of accessibility to really be something my team focuses on for the next year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. And we want to do it well, right? Let's perfect the things that we can do well, and then we could, you know, design everything. Like, why not?
Yeah, thank you. Kerry and Stacey, what has that looked like in your organizations? What has been helpful in terms of how to prioritize, how to make decisions, how to bring a team together to do this work across your organizations?
Well, one thing that has been important for the journey of our theater is just stepping back and actually mapping what we do, what we are accustomed to doing, as well as pulling back and recalling department by department, production by production, those individual one-off things that we've done, and creating a map of what we are currently capable of, what we are currently accustomed to doing. And by that, having that map, we are establishing where the gaps are in order to prioritize where we're going. Also, drawing out and asking ourselves where we've been spending money doing things, where we have relegated money from other places to dealing with the one-off things, and recognizing, okay, does that represent which departments will take leadership for this going forwards, and how are we going to actually build it into the budget? That every department now needs to think about their budget as having a line for continuing that one-off into an offering and a practice that people are able to tap into as they need. This project is tied for a second stage with our DEIA efforts. We have a committee, and the people in the committee are tasked with working with departments other than their own to check what progress they're making on several lines, and that includes access. And then communicating back to the committee, what is happening here? What is happening there? Is it bringing us into some kind of consistent line of operation? What that looks like for our institution is, one, the big thing, a massive website overhaul, changing the content, changing the text, changing everything. And for that big haul, the development is involved in getting the money, the proposals are coming in, that's the big stuff. But then the little things come up. The one person who's asked at each performance, one performance, I should say, each week about large print. Well, that's a pattern, and that's something that we can address. So now we're just printing out the playbill, just the main guts portion, so that people can access the large print. And every Monday or every time a company change happens, toss them out, put them in, and not to be hung up about the fact that somebody might want to take that with them. It's okay. Let's say yes. Getting to yes is a principle that I learned in retail that is so helpful in everything that you do. If your inclination is to say no, sometimes you gotta check yourself and think, well, who is the person who could say yes to this? And then move it along up to that person. Not to waste the other person's time by saying no and then forcing them to go walking around looking for the person who's going to help them. And also, being humble enough and where you are in the hierarchy of things that you will try to get the person who is asked, and it takes some boldness to ask, who is asked to get them a yes. So it's the big things and the little things, and then across the board, signaling to everybody that we're saying yes now. And we're figuring out how to make that yes real. So, and then, what, for your institution?
Yes.
Yeah. Now we can go. We've all reached yes.
No, I think what everybody's talking about is that access is it's a team effort. You need your access allies in all different departments, not just people who have access in your title. Lincoln Center is incredibly fortunate to have 4 full-time access team members. And we do 200 shows in less than 2 months over the summer. And so even that 4-person team sometimes is spread very thin. And so something that we have really tried to work hard at and are really doing something really well with is that we are making sure there is an access representative at every advance meeting when we are doing accommodations. So making sure that we're thinking about access not 2 hours before a show or 2 days before a show, but making sure that if we're meeting for a December show in September, that we're having those access conversations at the beginning. And so planning ahead is something that we are constantly thinking about.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
What I
Plan ahead.
plan. Oh God. What I really appreciate also that's coming up for me is this idea, and I think you said it as sort of the approach that Second Stage has taken of building from experience, building habits, building the habit of okay, we got a request, we provided this service once. Is this something that actually we could do? We could build a habit about providing going forward. Great, let's make a decision about that and let's do it. And this constant learning orientation. And this is a practice. There is always more to do, and there is always more to sort of hone and adapt and change. So that sort of orientation, that sort of curiosity came up, I think, in all of the conversations that we had prior to this.
And the idea of don't be afraid to take a backwards glance.
Yeah.
If you got it wrong, take the backwards glance. You may still be able to redeem the situation, even with the person that you've let down. Don't be afraid to take a backwards glance and actually institutionally capture what you've done, or institutionally capture, and I mean, as opposed to the staff that was on that night. It's one thing to praise them for the save when they made up for a failure to plan. But it's another thing to actually make sure that everyone knows that they understand if something arises, these resources exist and these resources have to be prioritized towards making things work. And so that when the one person leaves that was there on that day, the person who spearheaded it, the organization doesn't go backwards. You just got to capture what comes through, actually capture it.
Which is why the teamwork is so important.
Yes.
Yeah, Maria.
I think that also just building on taking a look back, don't be afraid to admit that you were wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I advocate for so many people that email in, they've gone to a show, this service wasn't available, that wasn't available, we couldn't access this, we couldn't access that. And the most regressive things that I find are the theaters that are well, that was just a one time. It was probably just wrong on that night. And I'm like, We have an institutional problem, right? Instead of not only taking a look back, say you're sorry, right? An apology goes such a long way, but I feel like, especially right now, everyone's so afraid of like, if I admit fault, I'll be sued, right? But then it just makes the situation worse because that person doesn't feel like you hear them. That person doesn't feel like you acknowledge that there was something bad that happened to them. And it doesn't help, right? If we make these habits, if we make these habits that, you know, look at accessibility in a particular institution as something that we can build and grow, like it's like teaching a kid, right? If you brush your teeth every night, you're just gonna remember to brush your teeth. Well, in some circumstances, let me not. It's easier to remember to brush your teeth, but it's also easier to understand that your worldview is not the only one, right? When I started my company, I got really nervous because I was like, I don't want to be the accessibility coordinator because my two experiences are only two things, right? I'm not blind, not deafblind, not, you know, in a wheelchair. That's not my experience. So I went out and found people that are, right? Because these are things I miss, right? And I had to turn around and be like, I am not, the experience of somebody who is a little person is something when I first started, I had a really hard time with because I was like, oh, this should be here for this ADA guideline. And then, you know, in our roundtable meetings, she was like, and here, and here. And I was like, yep. But now, you know, 4 years later, 4 years later, now it's something that I'm just so used to that because, you know, I made it a point for it to be in my world experience, right? My world experience is now, can I go? Can Shane go? Can Jenna go? Can Sophia go? And if the four of us can't go, what do we got to do to make that happen, right? So just, you know, being not afraid to say that you're wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of things. I'm comfortable with that.
I appreciate that so much. We have also, you already shared this, Maria, just that the reality is that audiences with disabilities have not had a great time at the theater for decades. They have been excluded. And so this work comes with a big sort of like mountain to, what's the metaphor? Climb when it comes to building back trust. So how has knowing that, Kerry and Stacey, like affected your approach to how you try to reach potential audience members and welcome them into your spaces?
Yeah, I think for us, something that we are acutely aware of is that a lot of the ways in which people try to reach audiences traditionally might not be accessible for a lot of folks with disabilities. And so we really try to build relationships with different disabled communities by meeting folks where they are and using the marketing tools that work for them. So for example, we have a lovely friendship with our friends at the Lighthouse Guild, which is an all-around support center for folks who are blind, low vision, all over that spectrum. And they do, you know, kind of podcast town halls every couple of weeks. And so Lincoln Center has been really excited to announce our programs there. So instead of just sending an email that may not be so accessible for folks, we record a audio described or like a description or like a copy that we would use for marketing, and we use it over like this podcast. And so it's been really great to get people who are excited about programs that way. And we do a lot of work with our ASL programming, where we have our Dazzles and our director of interpreters make video kind of promotions in ASL and posting them online. Again, kind of reaching the communities where they are. Again, Hands-On does a wonderful job at this, and being able to kind of look at the success of that and say, okay, how can we also do this by, instead of sending something in English, why don't we send something in ASL if we're trying to reach that audience? We had our wonderful Dazzle, Gabe Silva, for a recent hip hop performance, and Gabe recorded a video for us, and it got over 200 views and got us 80% of our audiences for that show. And so being able to meet the communities where they are, see what works for them in terms of their tools, and being able to apply that to our strategies has been really helpful.
And I just want to point out, that's a great example of the benefit of advanced planning, because that when you and I talked, that dazzle, that was put into their contract.
Yes.
About you're going to work on this show, and so part of this is you're going to generate this video, as opposed to after the fact, hey, can you quickly, would you be open to making this?
Yeah, it's something that we learned from a few shows that we've done when I first started, where we would have people being like, can I make a video for you? And we're like, oh, sure, yeah. And then we realized, we would get, 60 more invites, 30 more invites, 80 more invites. We were like, all right, then we should really build this in, because this is a strategy that's clearly working and clearly getting our audiences that we want to have come excited about the show.
And Stacey, you talked with a lot about sort of the long game of relationship building.
Recognizing that in our organization, we are much farther back from you guys in what you're doing, but we're doing what we can. That is that we have partnered with other organizations, with YAI and TDF.
Can you define those?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, YAI, YA Arts and Culture, Young Adult Institute Arts and Culture, used to be known as hospital audiences, and they promote and bring in audiences for particularly accessible performances, and TDF is Theater Development Fund. They offer a wide array of access opportunities for people to experience local arts, people working in nonprofits, people working in unions, but then specifically the TAP program, Theater Access Program, promotes and then arranges third-party sales of tickets to accessible performances. And Beth here in the front with Hands On is another resource, and one that we are hoping to get connected with in this coming season. We have to talk about that. But these partners help us to reach out to people who have, who are regular theater goers, regular buyers, with the shows that we have to offer. That's not getting to people who have not been going to theater regularly. So my campaign starting this summer has been to go out and hand my card off to folks at Sellis Manor and to reach out to Lighthouse Guild and to see if I can make a more direct connection. And also in doing that, help both YAI, YAI Arts and Culture and TDF to bolster their outreach so we can work together to make sure that more people are coming in and more people are finding a welcome in the community that they're creating. And that's another way to take some of the edge off of a bad past experience, is to put people into a community where they feel that it's not just their voice saying, I would like this, or I need that, or it would be helpful if. It's all of us together and saying, we have observed, and to have the strength of community to stand by you as you ask for what you need and as you demand to be heard for what you need. Because as I keep telling folks around me, when we sell that ticket, it's a contract.
Yeah.
Fulfill the contract. If someone comes to see a show or to experience a show, they need to actually experience it. So we have to figure out how to do that, or stop over-promising. Yeah, and you want to sell the tickets, so start thinking about how to fulfill the contract. So we're partnering with other organizations. I am trying to step out farther and bring new folks in to strengthen those who are already allying with us to bring the show to folks, and then showing up at those performances and speaking directly to people, handing out my card, making sure that if they have something to say, that they actually have a name and a person whom they've met, and they know my attitude, so that when they have a question, when they have a concern, not just about the needs that they have with us, but they'll contact me and say, I want to make sure that TDF TAP knows X, Y, and Z. I'm going to communicate that for them, because it's just concierging to make people fall further in love with theater, and that's what I can do.
Yeah, thank you. This like, it's a collaboration. Collaboration in your organization and with your collaborators, and also like across the field.
Yeah, there's a common phrase in the disability community, nothing about us without us. And so in the ways in which it's, we're trying to improve our programming and to make people come to theater more, it's this idea of learning from the community, getting the feedback, and being able to use your audiences as your collaborators has been something that I think about a lot and has been really helpful in the ways that I've been, at my time, been able to, get more people to come and just to really think about, providing constant channels for feedback and constant connections like you're doing. You're literally handing out a business card. Lincoln Center has, we all have our individual emails, but there's also a dedicated access inbox and an access phone line, so that if anybody has any questions, there is a clear, communicable way to call us. Sometimes people call us with other problems too. Unfortunately, we can't help you, get a front row ticket to ragtime. But what I can do is be able to provide resources and how you can get all the other things that you need. And so being able to have that constant channel and to connect with your audiences has just been something that is so important to this work.
I want to take us to sort of this beginning part of the audience journey, that of like the importance of marketing and website and buying a ticket and that experience. And so, where am I? I lost myself. What are best practices that you have experienced or that you have found for making a website welcoming, inclusive, informative of what is available to an audience member? Anybody?
Well, I'll call us out.
Yeah.
We've done not enough. Straight up not enough. And that's why the big haul of upheaval. But what I am trying to communicate with folks now, and I think I'm being heard, is that we have to do a little bit now that let the good happen and the great happen later. And so this just means going from having the audio described icon and the open caption icon in the performance calendar to having a pop-up happen for each person that buys on that day's performance, telling them, if you are buying for audio description or for open caption, be aware that, that optimal seating has been set aside. Contact the box office to get your place in that seating. Just to communicate a little farther, make it not insider knowledge. And very importantly, keeping someone from buying a ticket in an inappropriate location. So the little things that I've been just told, yes, we can do that. And so now I've got to write the pop-up, and I've got to talk to IT, and I've got to talk to Kevin, the website designer. But the good can be at least the way to keep things moving forward until you can get to the great. That's where I am right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, features that make a website accessible are things like alt text, like we already talked about, making sure that all the photos you post online have alt text, creating plain text versions of program announcements. A lot of times people will use fancy colors and designs, and that may not always be as accessible for folks who are blind or low vision with color contrast, so being able to make sure that you're using color contrast checkers. Using sans serif font is also more accessible for folks. Plain language is really helpful as well. And something that we are doing is noticing that a lot of times, know before you go or informational kind of things about access can be a lot of text to read, which can just be a lot for someone to take in. And so something that we've been doing is, particularly for our summer performances, doing like a video, like a welcome video, that not only shows you where the accessible entrances are, but also highlights different accommodations and gives you all the information that you need in terms of food and accessibility there. And that has been a way that we can both create a material that is informational, but also something that's engaging. We can put on our social medias, we can use clips from about the summer. It's been one of the biggest resources for our security guards, which I did not realize when we made this video. They were like, oh yeah, the security team has been watching this constantly, and it's been giving them so much information. It's been a lot easier for them to take in than just like, a one-page briefing. And so it's something that's helped our audiences. We have a lot of our guest experience representatives who are featured in that video. And so when an audience member comes, we're like, I saw you in the video. You told me about this entrance, and now I'm at this entrance, and you're at this entrance, and what a world. So it's been really great to find engaging ways that make our information accessible and just more, it's easier to take in a fun video rather than a 2-page long document.
I think one thing that I'll point out is not relying on the accessible website ticker, right?
Widgets don't do so much.
Those are the bane of my existence. If you can, give your website to a blind person that uses a screen reader, or give it to a member of the community. This is a majority of my work, is going to websites, turning on a screen reader, and then seeing that your website actually reads, "Welcome to heading 1. The industry, heading level 3. That's providing you heading level 1. Click, click, click. To this community event." And it's just so chopped up. And like, yes, when you're stylizing it, the bold and the colors and this and that, they look great and they're snazzy and it's wonderful, right? But if you go to a really good screen reader, you get to the third time where you have to triple click the third time. And then you're like, I don't really want to go. This is a lot of work to get through one sentence. And I'm not going to lie, I'm probably not going to do the rest of it. Because it might be over 100 more clicks to get through your first landing page. Right. And then you got to go buy a ticket. Oh, no, because then I'll send you an email. Then if there is a pop-up, that may not be screen reader enabled, so then the pop-up just reads blank pop-up, which has happened to me before, and I was like, cool, blank pop-up, wonder what that means. So it's one of those things where if you are working, and I say this a lot, like, you and I have talked many times, make sure that all of your initiatives are disability-led, right? It's great that your marketing department is totally cool about this. Make sure somebody from the community is also checking the work before you send it out, because otherwise you're going to have to restart anyway, and that's just going to cost you more time.
Well, and I think what you're also highlighting, Maria, is how this, and why I think we spend so much time on marketing or ticketing platform experiences, is because this is the window onto what the experience is going to be like at the theater. So if you're trying to read with your screen reader and you're getting this, why would you expect anything different from when you actually arrive at the theater?
Haha. Yes.
So I want to also take a minute to talk maybe briefly about ticketing, especially when, how do you set up a ticketing platform or a ticketing process to make purchasing a ticket as smooth as possible for those who need either accommodations or they need to sit in a specific location in the theater in order to access services. I'm also particularly interested because I imagine that the audience work at a variety of scale of organizations. Like, how do you do that at various scales? Or how would you recommend people do that at various scales?
Sorry, your name is listed under the outlines. I was like, I guess Maria has brilliant answers to this one.
Oh God, is it? There are a number of ways to sell your tickets. One of the best ways is to ensure that there is not one way to buy an accessible ticket, and I will die on this hill. I have been told more times than I care to count that if you need a deaf, hard of hearing seat or an accessible seat, please call this number. And that's great if you got VRS on standby. That's
Video relay
service for interpreters.
Kind of like a FaceTimes thing where you can call somebody on FaceTime and an interpreter will be on the phone. So that's how you communicate. So to make sure you identify that.
What she said. And if you have VRS, that's awesome. But if your hearing aids are dead, you just rolled out of bed, this ticket window it's like one of the lottery tickets, and you really, really want to go to the show, and you really want to enter at this particular space, but you got a service dog that can't be everywhere. I mean, she can, but it's just better over here. and you get to this wonderful pop-up that says, please call. And you're like, "Ah, can I not just email someone? We are in 2025. So I tell a lot of people, it's great to have a box office number. It's great to have a dedicated line for accessibility, but also have an email. Or a lot of websites will let you do the chat, the in-person chat, right? Just, subscribe to those methods of communicating, because you'll see a lot of people in the neurodivergent community. It's not just the deaf and hard of hearing communities. A lot of people have social anxiety. We don't want to talk to people. I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to talk to people now, right? I'm not.
Generally, millennials don't want to talk to people.
It's true.
I don't want to.
Why am I going to call you?
This is hard. I'm talking to a lot of people.
We're doing great.
To be fair, I have my emotional support pumpkin chai latte. Let's be very clear about that. But for real, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. And in a day where we have all this amazing technology, I'll sit here and IM you for 3 hours. If we got to work through an accessibility problem for a seat, I'm here. I'm focused. I'm, doing what I need to do. But understanding that a telephone number is not the most accessible way for people to buy tickets. And understanding that when you are buying tickets for accessibility seating, not every wheelchair accessible space is great for other disabilities.
Yes.
And I'm a die on this hill as well. I have had so many people be like, we have a wheelchair accessible space in the back of the theater. And I was like, that's fantastic for wheelchair accessible users. I am not a wheelchair accessible user. I do not want to take the space away from a wheelchair accessible user, right, who wants to come to this show for my service dog, who can very clearly fit under seats. And why would I take up this space that doesn't feel appropriate for me? Well, because that's where we put you. No, thank you. So understanding that the disabled person can probably advocate for themselves and know what works best for them, right? Instead of just being like, this is our designated seat. And it's like, that's fantastic for that particular need. I love my wheelchair accessible spaces, but we have transfer seats for people who have mobility aids, right? For people who can transfer chairs. There are so many different ways that people navigate this city, this earth, this experience, that we should be very cognizant that they can choose their own accommodations, right? And we don't have to challenge them.
Yeah.
We don't need to.
Yeah.
It's not a thing we need to do.
What you're talking about a lot is the idea of options and choice. I think that, we have the pleasure, and that for the summertime, Lincoln Center, creates 4 separate outdoor theaters just out of thin air. And so we're able to, thank you, it's exhausting. So we're able to sit there and look at the chairs and really be able to pick our accessible seat locations. And so we're not just putting, 4 in the back and calling it a day, but you're having your accessible seat signs on a couple seats in the front, because there are people who are blind or low vision who want to be able to sit up front. There are people who want an aisle seat. We have some higher weight chairs, so folks who need that accommodation, which is also great for service animals, because the bigger the dog, the tinier the chair, body space. Being able to, and then we have seats that are in the middle. We make sure that we have accessible seats across the theater, and I think that's something that I talk to a lot about with people who are doing new work in a small space in Lower East Side, where it's all GA and people general admission tickets, and so you're not assigned a seat. And so being able to, as a disabled person, walk into a theater and see accessible bands not just in the back or in the front, but all over the theater, is so great, because it is expressive of the complexity and the diversity of the disabled community itself.
I think also just educating your box office staff.
Yeah.
Right? One of the biggest things that I notice, especially, I do workshops for box offices and front of house staff, is that when I'm talking to box offices, they're like, well, I know that blind and low vision people have an audio described performance. And I'm like, that's great. Do you know where your blind low vision seating is? Yeah. Why would they need that if they're blind? Okay, here we go. Education, right? So blind low vision seats and deaf hard of hearing seats are usually in the front, right? And it's not because people are I'm gonna get a second row seat. No, that's not really. It's an accessibility accommodation, right? And making sure that your box office understands the difference between the two needs, right? Because sometimes they're very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's very true.
I got you.
I think, yes. We are going to take questions in just a couple minutes. I want to try to get us through a few more things. Because I think we've landed, now we're in the
Spice.
part of the journey where we're at the theater. We've
Yeah.
landed at the theater. And now, we've got whole different teams working at the theater to welcome audiences, to do the production of the show, to usher, to take the tickets. And those people might not necessarily have been the leads of that team in the task force or in the planning of accessibility services. And so how do you work with multiple teams to ensure that what was promised is delivered? Yes, Maria.
Group trainings. Huzzah. One of the coolest things that I get to do in my line of work is lead box office and front of house trainings. Nobody has to be perfect. A training is not going to get people 100% perfect, but a training is going to impact those ushers and the experience of your disabled community for those performances. And I have this awesome experience. I led a training at New York City Center, and I was at How to Dance in Ohio, and an usher came up to me and was like, ticket, just ticket. He was like, I was at your training at City Center, and I remember, and you're here, and ticket. And I was like, this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
This is awesome, because then, ushers can move houses, right? And so then that usher will be like, hey, guess what? If you have somebody that comes in here, I learned this a long time ago, and I know what it means, and and we build from there, right? We keep building, and he was so cute. I loved him. He was so excited. But then he asked me questions about How to Dance in Ohio, right? Like, we're dealing with the neurodivergent community. Can I do this better? Like, is there something different I can do here? And those questions are so important, right? Because it really does have an impact on the shows that you're going to see and the people that are going to see your shows.
Yeah, I agree. Group trainings are really important. I think something that Lincoln Center is incredible at doing is that on your first week of working in Lincoln Center, you get a training on how to access your email, like a training on how to get paid, and then you get an access training in what accessibility means in the world. And so everybody who comes in has an idea and a sense of what that means. We got some great feedback from our friends at the Lighthouse Guild when we did a focus group that said that walking around Lincoln Center's campus felt like being a small fish in a giant ocean and feeling like they didn't have the confidence to be able to navigate it on their own. So we worked with them to create a human guide training, which is to be able to walk kind of next to somebody and be able, or not walk, and be able to kind of physically guide them throughout a space. And so all of our ushers and front of house employees and security guards, anyone who deals with the person has that kind of training. Because something that we think about a lot is the entire experience. So for instance, if you're doing a show in ASL and you have ASL interpreters on stage, you might think oh, we did it, it's accessible now. But what if somebody who is using ASL wants to go buy a drink? What if they want to go buy merch? What if they have a question for an usher? How do you create that equity of experience for everyone who is coming, not just of what they're seeing on the stage, but also what they're doing the minute they step into your theater? And so making sure that you have floater interpreters around, making sure Lincoln Center is using a service called Convo, which is a video relay service. We have QR codes at David Geffen Hall and the David Rubenstein Atrium and Alice Tully Hall that our staff members wear, and it can immediately connect you to an ASL interpreter in 5 seconds over your cell phone. Making sure that people just have those extra kind of things that they need, having fidgets and tools and headphones, not just available for your sensory-friendly or relaxed performances, but just having, a small stash available for every show that you do. Being able to make sure that the audience has what they need in terms of that, and making sure that your staff is aware of what those tools and devices are.
I was going to add also understanding that not every deaf, hard of hearing person can sign.
Yeah.
Right. And so services like Live Transcribe, while it's not a real life person captioning, it is a great stopgap in if you're at the bar, right, and need to communicate with somebody, or if you're trying to get a direction to somewhere else and you can't understand the person. That's a really great stopgap that has helped a lot of people who don't have maybe the funds to do a floating interpreter or don't have that on a regular basis,
Yeah.
right? So just finding out which technology solutions work best for you.
And I speak for the small theater only because our venues are quite small, but that means that the training that happens goes deep, and it is with front of house managers who have been there and have worked in this arena for 17, 25 years. So it's great to have them at the helm and for them to be continually training a staff that doesn't turn over. But that's the small theater experience. Like we're very fortunate in that way that we are able to train and retrain people who are going to stay. So that's been a tremendous benefit for us. However, again, for the performances where I am making welcome to folks, I am staying there. I am there, not just introducing myself to people beforehand, but checking in at intermission and also checking in after the performance and not being afraid to ask, how was it? Both as a production and as an experience. And also just making sure I don't leave until I see every last person get to whatever conveyance it is that's taking them away from the theater, because the experience isn't over until I know people are well on their way. So I have already an experienced day of event in-place staff, but I always just try to be there to be what I call the slow down manager, because a lot of things are about moving a lot of people, a lot of places. I'm the one that's like, oh, there's a complication? Come over to Slow Down Alley and let's figure out how to make it work, you know, and get you what you need, so.
I think what a lot of us are talking about is in the importance of human touch and just like knowing that like in this vast world of technology, which is incredibly helpful, it can be very accessible for a lot of people. It's really important also just to have like a human being on the other end of that technology, because you're talking about the way in which a lot of people in the disabled community have lost trust in the theater industry. And so being able to be like, I am a person, I am here to listen to you. And whether that is, I'm gonna give you an accessible ticket buying link so that you don't have to go call the box office. I'm going to, you know, be there at the show. Lincoln Center has accessibility representatives who do a concierge service where a guest can book them free of charge in advance and just be one-on-one to support them while they're on campus. Just being able to make sure that there is a human and that you know the human's name and that they're there for you is something that is really important in this kind of work.
I want us to get to questions, but so the performance is over. What happens next? Because the journey is over, like they go home, but then presumably this is the start of a long-term relationship. How do you continue that? Or maybe something has not gone as well as it could have, and you want to keep that relationship going and make good on that.
I love a survey. Big fan of a survey. Some people don't fill out the survey, and that's okay. As long as you have sent them a survey and you're like, this is my email. Thank you for coming to the show. Here's my email if you want to like say anything. And you might not want to, and that's fine, because maybe in a few months' time, there might be a show coming up that doesn't have ASL planned, and someone is like, oh, I want to go see that show. But I know that person's email, so I'm going to go email them and see if that's possible. Being able to offer just that direct line of communication and share additional performances that are coming up. Like if you like this ASL show, here's 4 more coming up in the next week. Being able to like build that connection and keep that relationship going and just offer opportunities and pathways to be able to reach has been something that I think about all the time.
Yeah.
We do surveys as well, with the understanding that a large number of people are not going to fill out the survey. They've just gone on, and it's people who really have something to say. But then you have to respect that if someone has something to say, they're the tip of the spear. And there are, you know, for every one person, there are 15 people who have some variety of experience like that one. And so there are no cranks in survey responses. There are just varieties of experience, and they are kind enough to let you know about it. So take that so seriously. If something has gone awry at the theater, I try so very hard to never let that person leave without getting a means of checking, of contacting them to communicate about it later, or making it very clear that I very badly hope that they will use my card, use my contact information in order to reach out to me if they want to talk about it from any angle, and also that I am here.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't want to talk about it again. Maybe it's next time I want to go about this in a different way. Well, I'm your different way. And again, I can do this because it's a small theater. Our off-Broadway house is less than 300 seats. We have the smallest house on Broadway. So I can do this, and it's just a benefit of the institution. But we're at okay, and we are moving towards better in order to move towards good. But we're here at okay right now. So if anyone is needing courage, I'm here to share the courage, because it's just about trying and trying.
I think surveys are amazing. I think they get a lot of like good physical data that you can use. I am a huge fan of a focus group.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of a focus group. When I was writing the software that I'm developing, we did a number of focus groups, both at Visions and Lighthouse, but we also did it at Lexington School for the Deaf. A focus group is one of the best resources that I have, because then you can keep in touch with people, not only past the performance, but like, hey, like, I got a random email from one of our operators like a year later. Like, I know you're doing that thing. I have this thing that I was thinking about like randomly a month ago, and I just wanted to email it and write. So that keeps the level of communication open. I love a good focus group.
Thank you.
What's the software?
Oh yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about your software, or would you rather not?
I've written a software that does open captioning, closed captioning, audio description, and language translation. And it's completely designed by disabled people for disabled people.
Boom. Amazing.
Shall we take some questions?
Sure.
Okay, hold on, let me get to my prompt. Okay, yes, hi everyone. I'd love to open up to a few questions. We'll take maybe one, two, or three. Ash, standing with the striped black and white dress, has a microphone for those who want to ask a question.
Like, I totally lost my copy.
Hello. I think specifically for Maria, I appreciate the specific kind of start levels, alt text and open captioning on social media. As a very small company, it's if this feels like a daunting process of how to start, it's something that's been on our list for a very long time. I think several in our group, we are either departments of one or two. So when you talk about kind of like, we're scaling Whalebag, it's very nice to hear the second stage is struggling with this, because I'm like, if you're struggling, I feel a little bit better that we can't even get started. We don't want to, you know, dive in and do it wrong, and so I think there's hesitancy, or dive in and just do it once, you know, and then we're not really, because then we're not a long-term solution, and we don't want anybody to expect something. What would be, other than the marketing kind of tools that you started, what's a great first step to really do something that's meaningful, even if it's not something that's huge and a first leap?
In regards to captioning and alt text?
In making we really want our theater to be accessible, but again, it's always on the we're struggling for every dollar, and so like it never makes it to any kind of thing where we can move forward just because there's no funds for it. So any step of accessibility to make that first, but meaningful contribution.
So I think a really good like first step is your social media game, right? Like I understand that you definitely have a smaller budget. Maybe partnering with an organization is out of your budget range at the moment. But in that case, like I invite whoever is working on your social media to turn on alt text and then turn the phone upside down, right? Just listen to a bunch of different alt texts from other places, right? Get yourself familiar. Go on to Netflix, Hulu, whatever you have. turn on the audio descriptions and look at the ceiling, right? One of the ways that or reach out for a training, right? I get to work at IDC with this wonderful, amazingly talented writer, Liz Gutman, who is like the top of the top when it comes to audio descriptive writers. She is the bee's knees, but she provides training on audio description, right? I sat in one of her classes. My business partner, Shane Detmar, who is a blind human, threw me into audio description, invited me over and said, you're gonna audio describe this movie. I know you've never done it before. I know you don't know what to do. I know you don't know how to do it, but go. And that was very daunting, right? But also it really did make me think about, what does this look like? It was the never-ending story. First of all, that's just mean to do to anybody. It's just mean. There's so many visual elements. I was like, you hate me. And they were like, but this is such a good way to get involved, right? And then everything that I looked at from there became about, what does this look like, right? If you are writing captions, model your captions after someone else, right? Because then it becomes intentional, right? Then it becomes something that your theater can do. If you can't afford an ASL interpreted performance, totally get it. We live in the economy that we live in, yay. But can you do a captioned performance? Can you do a live audio description performance with some of the podcasters at Lighthouse? Can there be a community partnership where services are exchanged for X amount of tickets, right? Can you make things work? I think right now, especially in accessibility, we need to make it important that it is a budget line, and we need to understand that it is a budget line. But for smaller theaters, I find it really does have to be a community effort, right? One of the nice things about the software that I've created is we do commercial contracts, but 5% of those commercial contracts get put into a fund so that we can help deaf schools, like Lexington School for the Deaf Theater Department. They get the program for free, right? We do this system of reparations so that we can make sure that accessibility is not just for people who can afford it, right? So I think, also email me.
That's so cool.
Also, I know
We'll figure out something.
I know you didn't ask me, but may I let you know, relaxed performances are free. You could do that with very little money. You can, create the structure that works best for your venue, and you can do that for free. There are a lot of organizations also and individuals that will do things, trainings and stuff, low cost. May I give a plug out to the Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium, with whom many people are here in this room. They will also do trainings. There are a lot of individuals doing trainings, but whenever somebody asks me about a first step, I always recommend a relaxed performance, because that is little to no cost.
Touch tours as well. If you get the right departments on, touch tours are extremely low cost and something you can do for the communities.
True.
Beth.
Hi, well, one
Tag
thing
teaming it.
you should do an audit of your organization. I think you should kind of look at your organization, see what you do. I do think that there's probably things that you're doing that provide accessibility that you don't realize provide accessibility. A large print, anybody can do a large print. You blow it up. You blow up a program, or you blow up something. I think having an accessibility statement on your website to just say, we welcome all people to our organizations. I will say, I disagree a little bit with you, Maria, about the telephone. I think until you can develop a level of trust with the community, having that direct contact, and I do think it's generational. I like to call, and as a person with a disability, until I trust the organization that I'm going to, I don't trust anybody. I know what my needs are, and just because somebody says we're accessible, what does that mean? That means something to them, might mean something different to me. So I like having a person on another end that I can talk to say, this is what I need, and I need to make sure that my experience is okay, and only I know that. And so somebody's telling me that their space is accessible, could be a step, could be a flight of steps, could be no steps. I don't know what that means, and until I trust, and Danielle, I mean, you said that before, I think that developing that level of trust with the community is like a goal. I don't think it's the first step, but I do think having that contact with somebody to talk to at an organization, I think putting on your website that you have large print programs or you can offer that is a step. I mean, I think that that kind of says something, whether you have on your menu, you have an accessibility drop down on your menu, whatever information you can put might not be fully accessible to all people at all times, but I think having a statement or having that kind of information on your website to say, there are 3 steps. I think information is really important, whether it's kind of good information or challenging information. Telling me that there's 5 steps into the bathroom is information for me.
Yeah.
Maybe I can do 5 steps. Maybe I can't do 5 steps. But I think giving me the information puts the power on me and allows me to know, okay, I can do that. But it also kind of shows me that the people in the theater have thought about this, and that kind of tells me something, that they've kind of taken the time to kind of go through their organization to say, there's 1 step into the bathroom, there's 1 step into the lobby, there's no steps into the lobby, it's 5 steps from a train. All that kind of information doesn't cost anything. It's not like an accessibility program that you're doing. It's just being considerate to your entire audience and giving information, not only to people with disabilities, but to your entire audience. And I think that that's a start, in terms of we're small, Art New York there's a lot of small organizations here. And I think that there's so much that we can do to take this idea of accessibility and putting it in this different category and making it much more kind of regular and not something that's so special, that's so different, to start to welcome in this community that you'd like to welcome in. So I think that it's just a different mindset into what we're thinking about and how we think about disability and accessibility and trying to make it much more kind of normal and normalized to everybody. And we can already do that. I mean, really and I think that these kind of, whatever you want to call it, accessibility audit or just audit of you, just looking at your organization and just kind of seeing what you're already doing that makes it okay for everybody is just such a great way to start and doesn't cost anything, and it's a good step on the road to the future programs. I mean, everybody kind of jumps to all the programs that you have to do, and there's so many things that are already being done that we don't think about, and this whole idea that accessibility is so out of the mainstream, it's not. It's just, and how we welcome it or how we kind of think about it to make it not so different anymore is, I think, for our society, will be good for everybody.
Totally. Thank you, Beth. I think some things that I want to lift up about what you said, and also I think what we are saying is the importance of it's a practice. So like, how can we make sure that it's kind of centered in our thinking, in our decision making, in how we just like go about the world. And yes, there is like, this is where know before you go videos or emails are very useful. Like just describe your space. How are people going to get there? What is it going to feel like when they get there? Like that's a very easy thing to do. And then the other thing that I just want to point out that maybe we haven't said explicitly, but that I hope is people take away is whatever you're doing, yes, put it on your website, but then you have to follow through with it.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
Something I talked to Danielle at length about in our conversation was the word transparency, and being clear and open with people about if someone has a question about how many steps does it take, whether you answer that via a personal email, a personal phone call, a personal chat, know that there's a human answering it and not just an AI bot.
Yeah.
So that makes someone feel like they're being heard. If something goes wrong, being transparent, like here's why it went wrong, and here's what we're going to do to make it better next time. Being open and honest is what is going to build that trust again, and is what is going to make someone feel like not only am I going to be safe, am I going to be comfortable, but I'm being heard and being taken seriously, especially in a situation like this, where if something isn't accessible for somebody, that could, I mean, it could be a dangerous situation. Someone could be put in serious harm if something is not accessible for them. And so having a human who is transparently being real with you, not using customer service voice, telling you what's going on, here's what I can do, and I'm here to support you, is going to be like what is building that trust again, and what is going to make someone feel like they are being supported in a theater that maybe doesn't have, you know, the highest technology in the world, but is at least trying to do something.
I think also, I don't think we disagree. I think that, I don't know if it came across wrong. I wasn't advocating for taking away the phone number. I was advocating for adding on things like the email, multiple ways for people to communicate, because that's like, only you know you, right? But I wasn't advocating for taking away the phone call. I was just advocating, it's hard when the phone call is the only option, right? And you can't exactly, maybe I can't do the phone call right now, right? So having multiple ways of people to contact the theater is you know, the best idea for everybody, right?
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you all so much for being here and for this panel. The question I had was more for Maria, but if anybody has tidbits on the focus groups that you mentioned.
Sorry, y'all.
How do these focus groups work? How do you find people? Do you pay these people, and where do you find that money? I'm very interested in exploring the focus group, and I'd love to hear more about the process.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so focus groups can be whatever you would like them to be. We're gonna start there. Yeah, my partnership with someone like Visions, right? Visions is one of the larger residential programs for the blind here in New York City. It is wild to me that people don't take the little hike down to 23rd Street. There are so many people at Visions in particular, at Lighthouse too, but I find more at Visions who are like, if you give me a ticket and it's accessible, I will go.
Yeah.
And they're the coolest people in the world, right? I have somebody, Arturo, who emails me like every month, right? Is there a focus group I can attend? Like, I just want to go see some theater, right? Because traditionally, they don't have the same opportunity, or there's like one audio described performance that's live a year, right? And that's not a lot of theater. And there are people who are at Visions who have lost their vision, right? Who were not born blind or not born low vision, who have gone through this transition in their life where they are now in the blind community. And so they have reference points to certain types of things that we ask a lot of questions about. When I was designing this website with the software, we asked them, what do you like? What don't you like? We had a pizza party, and we got them tickets to Into the Woods, which is who we were, you know, experimenting with at the time. And I needed not you're doing great feedback, right? And I will be the first one to tell you, the blind and the deaf communities will tell you exactly what you're doing wrong.
Yep.
With no hesitations and no holds bar. My favorite thing is I get really frustrated. You know, thank you, you're doing great. But that doesn't make me better. Right? And so the things that I find the most valuable are the people who are like, I hate this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great, I'm gonna think on this and I'm gonna get back to you, right? And so that's the beginning of that process. The beginning of the process looks like, can you reach out to a coordination manager? Is there a group of people that are already excited to go to the theater who would love to give you that feedback? Because there are a few. And what does it look like for your organization? Can you partner with Beth at Hands On for an ASL performance for the deaf community? Can you partner with us to do a touch tour for the blind and low vision community? Can you take these ideas and demo them for a night, right? To see if your organization can adapt. Because I'll tell you right now, you can. You 100% can. But it's about getting this template and then building that into your budget to cover the costs, right? And then getting the feedback. Can the blind community readily access your front door? I went and did a focus group at a place where the front door was like inside this spiral. And I was like, we got to work on this. This is bad. Every single person couldn't find it. I was like, yay. but yeah, just things like that, right? So your focus group starts with, can you reach out to a community organizer? Can you reach out to a member of the community? Can you reach out to a programming manager and see what it looks like for your organizations to work together? We are in the age of resistance, right? The disabled community in general is in the age of resistance. And so finding and building these community partners are how you get people back into theater. And I find it's a lot easier to do at like smaller non-for-profits than it is to do commercially, because we have more hoops to jump through.
As a larger non-profit, I could share for our focus groups, I've been a part of 2 in my time at LCPA, Lincoln Center for Performing Arts. We did a general one for our deaf and hard of hearing performances with ASL interpretation, and we did one for blind and low vision guests, asking about general campus accessibility and what they need. It is always vital to compensate disabled people for their time, whether that is a complimentary ticket or some kind of like honorarium. Being able to pay people for their labor is huge. I think it's really great and vital to, when you're doing a focus group with the community, to have somebody who is a part of that community leading it or moderating it. You know, we did our ASL interpreted deaf and hard of hearing performances focus group in American Sign Language, and we had interpreters who were kind of like interpreting in a separate channel so that we could understand what was being said. We had notes being taken. To have somebody who is, you know, a person at a lofty organization talking to you is a different kind of tone of voice and a different kind of conversation that you would have than someone from your own community, and you're gonna get a lot more honesty that way. We also tend to structure our focus groups with multiple types of questions, things that are open-ended and things that are more numerical, so like on a scale of 1 to 5, or like, you know, say 3 words, and that way you can get a lot more data from that. That will not just be like, I liked it. So being able to have that kind of conversation, for our ASL focus group that we did, we were able to reach out to folks who had attended performances in the past, being like, hey, we're offering this honorarium, come talk to us. We did all of our focus groups over Zoom. That way folks could kind of participate from wherever they are and feel comfortable in their own environment. And then for our blind and low vision group, we reached out to Lighthouse Guild. They have a really wonderful team that, like, if you send them a focus group and you give them kind of like a scope, they will do a lot of the outreach for you. And it's been great to have had so many people from that focus group now become like regular attendees at performances. Because a lot of times people just aren't aware of what you're doing. We've actually had somebody who started out we met them through the Lighthouse focus group. They've come to performances, and now they are a blind quality control specialist working on our audio described performances. So that pipeline has just been the coolest thing to be able to witness, and to know that it came from a simple email to the folks at Lighthouse was really just like a wild thing to be able to experience. So yes, surveys are great, and focus groups also do so much.
That is, sorry, Maria.
Did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
No, you didn't. You can,
Okay.
please.
I was also just going to add on to Kerry's point. There's a great value in the open-ended and the numerical questions. Also, one of the questions that I love is, what would you do?
Yeah.
What would make this experience the best for you personally, right? Because I find so many great ideas from what people think are just specifically designed and catered to them.
Yeah.
And how can we expand that so more people can enjoy it, right? I love those kind of questions. I love, but yeah, reaching out.
This has been really lovely. Thank you, all 3 of you. Kerry, Maria, Stacey, it's been a real pleasure. And thank you once again to our ASL interpreters, Stephanie and Lisa, and our captioning service, National Caption Institute, and all of you for being here, and for your questions, and for your engagement, and for all of you watching from the future. It's my favorite part.
What's it like?
HowlRound's live stream.
Does it get better?
And thank you to Transcend Streaming. We are going to break for lunch in the Lindsay. It will be tacos. We love a taco at Art New York. Lots of different options for all different dietary needs. Please join us, and then we'll continue our programming here at 3 p.m. Thank you.